Commander Zethkar sat in his office high above the galaxy's central command station. Through the massive window, he could see thousands of ships from hundreds of different worlds. Each ship carried a different species, each with their own way of fighting. For 300 years, he had studied how every race in the galaxy made war. He knew their patterns, their weaknesses, their strengths. No military force could surprise him anymore. At least, that's what he believed. The holographic display on. His desk showed the latest addition to the Galactic Defense Force, Earth, a small blue planet on the outer edge of known space. The humans had just learned to travel faster than light. Now they wanted to join the galactic community and help defend it. Zethkar's 4 eyes moved across the human military records. He had spent weeks studying their wars. What he saw was typical of most young species. They fought over land, resources, and ideas. They used simple weapons and basic strategies. Their biggest conflicts involved only a few million soldiers. To someone who had seen wars with billions of fighters across entire star systems, human warfare looked small and primitive. Tribal conflicts, he muttered to himself, his voice making the clicking sounds of his people. Nothing more than organized. Violence between groups who can't talk to each other. He pulled up records of something humans called World War II. The numbers made him shake his head. 50 million dead over 6 years. The humans seemed proud of this conflict, calling it their greatest victory over evil. Zethkar had seen single battles where more beings died in a single day. What impressed other species about this human war, he couldn't understand. The door to his office made a soft sound. His assistant entered, a young Veltar female named Kirith. "Commander, the human delegation has arrived. They're waiting in meeting room 7. Zethkar closed the display and stood. His tall, thin body moved with the grace of a species that had evolved in low gravity. "Have you reviewed their files?" "Yes, sir. Admiral Lisa Grant leads them. She commanded their space forces during the Mars Colony War. Colonel Jake Murphy fought in their ground forces on Europa. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster served in their naval intelligence." "Mars Colony War?" Zethkar repeated. 12,000. Soldiers total. How did they even call that a war? Kirath looked confused. "Sir, their records show they fought very hard for those colonies. Many humans died." "Many humans." Zethkar clicked his tongue in amusement. "A Shrek the hunting party has more members than their entire war did. Come, let's meet these simple warriors." The meeting room was designed to accommodate many different species. The air was set to breathe safely for both Veltar and humans. Zethkar entered and saw 3 beings that looked exactly like the files had described. Humans were short compared to most galactic species, with only 2 eyes and strange hair covering their heads. They stood when he entered, a sign of respect he appreciated. "Admiral Grant," he said in perfect English. The translation device in his throat made speaking their language easy. "Welcome to Hegemony Station. I am Commander Zethkar, your liaison." To the Galactic Defense Force, Lisa Grant stepped forward. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Commander, thank you for meeting with us. We're honored to serve alongside the galaxy's defenders." Zethkar gestured for them to sit. The humans took chairs that had been adjusted for their size. "I have studied your military history extensively. Admiral, your species shows promise, though your experience with large-scale conflict is limited. Limited? Colonel Jake Murphy spoke up. He was younger than Grant, with dark skin and military scars on his hands. "We've been fighting wars for thousands of years." "Of course," Zethkar nodded politely. "But your largest conflicts involve what we would consider battalion-sized forces. The hegemony regularly manages operations with millions of ships and billions of soldiers. Scale changes everything in warfare. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster leaned forward. She was a small woman with blonde hair tied back in a military style. We understand we have much to learn, Commander, but we're fast learners, and we're committed to defending innocent life. Admirable, Zethkar said, though his tone suggested he found it naive. Your emotional approach to warfare is interesting. Most species learn to separate feelings from tactical decisions as they advance. Admiral Grant's eyes narrowed slightly. Our emotions are the weakness, Commander. They're what we fight for. Indeed. Zethkar pulled up a holographic display showing ship formations. Now, let's discuss where humans will be most useful in the defense force. Your ships are small, but appear well built. Your crews show discipline. I believe support roles would suit you well. Support roles? Murphy asked. Supply runs medical, evacuation, civilian transport. Important work that doesn't require extensive combat experience. Zethkar highlighted areas on the display. The galaxy needs reliable species for these duties. The three humans exchanged glances. Grant spoke. Carefully. We appreciate your assessment, Commander. But we came here to fight alongside our allies, not behind them. Fighting and dying uselessly aren't the same thing, Admiral. Zethkar's voice carried the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to children. Modern galactic warfare requires understanding of energy-based weapons, quantum shielding, temporal displacement tactics, and multi-dimensional battle spaces. Your species still uses chemical explosives and metal projectiles. We also use fusion weapons, plasma cannons, and antimatter charges, Foster said quietly. Basic energy weapons, Zethkar dismissed. The hegemony has been using those technologies for millennia. What matters is understanding how to use them in conjunction with allies who think very differently than you do. A Christic commander processes information at light speed. A Harbinger unit can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. How does human intuition compete with that? Admiral Grant was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. Maybe it doesn't compete, Commander. Maybe it does. Something else entirely. Before Zethkar could ask what she meant, an alarm sounded throughout the station. The lights changed to red, and a voice announced in multiple languages. Alert. Incoming message from Outer Rim Defense Command. Priority Alpha. Zethkar stood quickly. Excuse me. Priority Alpha means immediate threat to civilian populations. He activated his personal communicator. Command, this is Zethkar. Report. The voice that came back was tight with fear. Commander, we have Shrakthi ships moving on the Kepler colonies. Estimated force size is over 2,000 vessels. They've already hit 3 systems. Civilian casualties are in the millions. The humans had stood as well. Grant spoke first. Shrakthi? Insectoid. Species from the galactic edge. Zethkar explained, his mind already shifting to tactical mode. They fight in overwhelming numbers and show no mercy to non-combatants. This is exactly the kind of threat the Defense Force exists to stop. He turned back to his communicator. Estimated time to full mobilization? 18 hours for a response. Force, 48 hours for full deployment. Too long, Zethkar muttered. The Shrakthi will have consumed those colonies by then. He looked at the humans. I'm afraid your introduction to galactic warfare will have to wait. This is a major operation requiring experienced crews. Our ships are ready now, Murphy said. Colonel, I appreciate your eagerness, but 3 human vessels won't make any difference against 2,000 Shrakthi raiders. You lack the firepower, the experience, and the tactical knowledge. The best thing you can do is stay here and learn from observing our response. Admiral Grant stepped closer to Zethkar. Commander, people are dying right now. If we can help save even one life, isn't that worth something? Admiral, warfare isn't about good intentions. It's about capability and results. Sending inexperienced forces into a major battle helps no one. The human delegation exchanged another look. This time, Zethkar saw something in their eyes that he couldn't identify. It wasn't fear or anger or disappointment. It was something else entirely. "We understand, Commander," Grant said finally. "We'll stay and observe, as you suggest." Zethkar nodded approvingly. "Wise decision. You'll learn much from watching how experienced species handle a real crisis." As the humans left the meeting room, Zethkar felt satisfied. He had correctly assessed their capabilities and kept them from getting hurt in a battle they couldn't win. It was the kind of logical decision that had made him one of the hegemony's best tactical analysts. He had no idea. He had just made the biggest mistake of his military career. The hegemony defense force moved like a well-oiled machine. Zethkar stood in the main command center, watching dozens of screens that showed ships from across the galaxy moving into position. Each species had their role. The Christic provided long-range scanning and communication. The Harbingers would phase in and out of normal space to confuse the enemy. The Veltar coordinated the entire operation. "Shragshi forces have taken 4 more colonies," reported his assistant Kirath. "They're moving faster than our models predicted." Zethkar studied the tactical display. Red dots showed enemy positions spreading like a disease across the outer rim. They're following standard swarm doctrine. Hit fast, consume resources, move to the next target. We'll establish defensive lines here and here. He pointed to 2 star systems. Force them to fight where we want them to fight. What about the civilian evacuation ships? Standard procedure. Military escorts will guide them to safe systems. We'll trade space for time until our main force arrives. Everything was going according to plan. This was how civilized species fought wars. Careful planning, logical decisions, acceptable losses balanced against strategic gains. The Shragthi were dangerous, but they were predictable. Every species eventually learned to fight them the same way. Then the humans arrived. "Commander," the communications officer called out. 3 human ships have just dropped out of light. Speed near the combat zone. Zethkar felt his stomach drop. "What?" "I told them to stay here and observe." On the main screen, 3 small ships appeared. They were tiny compared to the massive hegemony vessels around them. The largest was barely the size of a Veltar destroyer. Its hull was painted with strange markings and the name Un's Defiance. "Admiral Grant is requesting permission to join the defensive formation," the communications officer said. "Denied," Zethkar said immediately. "Order them to return to base immediately. They'll only get in the way." "Sir, they're not responding." "To the recall order." Zethkar activated his personal communicator. "Admiral Grant, this is Commander Zethkar. You are ordered to return to Hegemony Station immediately. This is not a training exercise." Grant's voice came back clear and calm. "Commander, we're here to help. We won't interfere with your operation." "Admiral, you don't understand the situation. The Shragthi aren't fighting individual ships. They attack in swarms of hundreds. Your 3 vessels can't possibly." "We understand the odds, Commander. We're staying." Before Zethkar could respond, new alarm sounded. "Contact the sensor," officer announced. "Shragthi swarm detected. Size estimated at 800 vessels." The main screen changed to show the approaching enemy. They looked like a cloud of angry insects, each ship black and twisted, moving together in perfect coordination. Zethkar had seen this sight many times before. It always made his skin crawl. "All ships, assume defensive formation Omega-7, he commanded. "Prepare to execute tactical withdrawal to secondary positions on my mark. The hegemony ships moved into position. Large vessels formed the center, medium ships on the flanks, small ships in the rear. It was a formation designed to inflict maximum damage, while preserving the fleet for the real battle that would come later. The Shrek swarm approached like a wave of death. Their ships screened forward, weapons charging, ready to tear apart anything in their path. And Captain Ryan Torres did something that broke every rule of galactic warfare. Instead of staying in formation, the UN's Defiance accelerated directly toward the enemy swarm. What is he doing? Zethkar stared at the screen in shock. Get me Torres immediately. Captain Torres here. The human's voice was steady, almost cheerful. Captain, return to formation immediately. You're moving directly into the enemy's main force. Roger that, Commander. We see them. Then why are you still advancing? Because there's a civilian evacuation convoy behind us, sir. About 3,000 people trying to get to safety. The Shrek are going to cut them off unless someone stops them. Zethkar checked his displays. Torres was right. A group of refugee ships was moving slowly toward a safe system. At their current speed, the Shrek would reach them before they could escape. Captain, the evacuation convoy is acceptable collateral damage. We'll save more lives by preserving our forces for the main battle. There was silence on the communication channel for a moment. When Torres spoke again, his voice had changed. It was still calm, but there was something else in it now. Something that made Zethkar's scales prickle. Commander, I don't think you understand. There are 3,000 people on those ships. Families, children, old people who've never hurt anyone. And you're telling me they're acceptable collateral damage? Captain, this is war. We must think strategically. No, sir. This is exactly war. And in war, you protect the people who can't protect themselves. The UN's Defiance and the two other human ships accelerated toward the Shrek swarm. Zethkar watched in amazement as 3 tiny vessels charged toward 800 enemy ships. This is insane, he muttered. They're going to be destroyed in seconds. But they weren't. The first human ship, commanded by Captain Nicole Hayes, fired everything it had but the lead Shrek vessels. Her weapons were primitive by galactic standards, but she used them in ways no one expected. Instead of targeting enemy weapons or engines, she aimed for their sensor arrays and communication systems. Suddenly, the front of the Shrek swarm couldn't see or talk to each other. The second ship, led by Commander Steve Walsh, did something even stranger. Instead of fighting the Shrek ships, he rammed his vessel directly into their formation. His ship was destroyed, but it broke their perfect coordination. For the first time anyone could remember, a Shrek swarm looked confused. Then Torres arrived. The UN's Defiance was the largest of the 3 human ships, but it was still tiny compared to its enemies. Torres should have tried to escape or call for help. Instead, he did something that made every alien in the command center question their understanding of warfare. He broadcast a message on all frequencies, in multiple languages, so everyone could hear. This is Captain Ryan Torres of Earth. To any Shrek who can understand me, listen carefully. Those evacuation ships contain innocent people, families, children. If you want to fight someone, fight me. I'm right here. Then he turned his ship toward the largest concentration of enemy vessels and opened fire. What happened next defied everything. Zethkar knew about combat. The UN's Defiance should have been destroyed instantly. Instead, Torres and his crew fought like nothing he had ever seen. When their main weapons failed, they used backup systems. When their backup systems failed, they used emergency systems. When their emergency systems failed, they fought with whatever they could find. Zethkar watched human crew members manning weapons by hand when the automated systems were destroyed. He saw them firing small arms out of airlocks when their ship. Weapons were gone. He watched Torres ram his damaged vessel into enemy ships. When he had nothing left to shoot with, the Shrakthi didn't know how to respond. They were used to enemies who fought logically, who retreated when the odds were hopeless, who surrendered when defeat was certain. They had never faced warriors who simply refused to stop fighting. "Sir?" the sensor officer called out. "The evacuation. Convoy has reached the safe zone. What about the human ships?" "2 destroyed. The Defiance is heavily damaged and drifting." Zethkar looked at the tactical display. 3 human ships had held off 800 Shrakthi vessels long enough for 3,000 civilians to escape. It was impossible, but he was watching it happen. "Are there any survivors?" "Unknown, sir. The Defiance isn't responding to communication. Send a rescue team immediately." "But, sir, the Shrakthi." Now, Zethkar ordered Dot as rescue ships moved. Toward the damaged human vessel, Zethkar stared at the screen. Everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. The humans hadn't fought logically or strategically. They had fought with something else entirely, something that scared him, more than the Shrakthi ever had. The rescue teams found Captain Torres alive, but badly hurt. His ship was destroyed, half his crew was dead, and he had burns covering most of his body. When they brought him to the medical bay, he asked only one question: did the civilians make it out? Zethkar visited Torres in the hospital. The human captain was covered in bandages, but his eyes were alert. "Commander," Torres said when he saw him, "thank you for sending the rescue teams. Captain, I need to understand something. Why did you attack the Shrakthi swarm? You had to know it was impossible to win." Torres was quiet for a moment. "Did we win?" "What do you mean?" 3,000 people made it to safety. Their families will see them again. Their children will grow up. Sounds like winning to me. Zethkar felt confused. "But your ship was destroyed. Most of your crew died. How is that victory?" "Commander, have you ever had children?" "My species doesn't form family bonds like yours." Torres nodded slowly. "I have a daughter back on Earth. She's 8 years old. Her name is Emma. She likes to draw pictures of spaceships." He looked at the ceiling. "When I saw those evacuation ships, all I could think about was Emma. What if she was on one of those ships? What if someone else's little girl was scared and crying, waiting for someone to save her? But they weren't your responsibility. They were people. That makes them everyone's responsibility." Zethkar left the medical bay more confused than ever. He returned to his office and pulled up human military records again. This time, he looked deeper. He studied their smaller conflicts, their rescue operations, their peacekeeping missions. What he found disturbed him. Humans didn't just fight wars. They fought for people. In every conflict, in every battle, they made decisions that put civilian lives above military objectives. They took risks to save strangers. They sacrificed strategic advantages to protect the innocent. Most disturbing of all, they won battles they should have lost because they refused to accept defeat when others depended on them. 3 days later, Admiral Grant requested another meeting. This time, she brought Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster and a new officer, Sergeant Ben Clark. Zethkar noticed that all 3 humans looked tired and serious. "Commander," Grant said, "we've been studying the Shrakthi attack patterns. We think we can help." "Admiral, with respect, 3 ships against their entire force. We're not talking about a direct attack," Foster interrupted. "We want to go behind their lines, intelligence gathering, find their breeding facilities and supply bases." Zethkar activated his tactical display. "Lieutenant Commander, the Shrakthi control 17 star systems now. Their territory is filled with patrol ships and automated defenses. A reconnaissance mission would be suicide." "Maybe," Foster said. But Dr. Helen Wade has been studying Shrek-Thi biology. She thinks she's found a weakness. A new human entered the room. Dr. Wade was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She carried a datapad filled with biological charts. "Commander," she said, "the Shrek-Thi reproduce in large breeding facilities. Each facility can produce millions of new warriors. But they have to be built in specific environments with exact temperature and chemical conditions." "We know this," Zethkar said. "The hegemony has been fighting them for decades." "Yes, but did you know that if you destroy just one key component, in their breeding process, the entire facility becomes useless? Not just damaged, completely useless for years." Zethkar looked at the data. Even if this is true, reaching these facilities would require getting past their entire defense network. "Which is why we're volunteering," Foster said. "A small team. Fast ships. Get in, plant the charges, get out. And if you're caught?" The humans exchanged glances. Sergeant Clark spoke for the first time. "Then we make sure the job gets done anyway." Zethkar stared at them. "You're talking about a suicide mission." "We're talking about saving lives," Grant said firmly. "Every day those breeding facilities operate, millions more Shrek-Thi are born. Millions more warriors who will attack innocent people. But why you? Why not wait for a larger force with better equipment?" Dr. Wade stepped forward. "Because people are dying right now, Commander. Every hour we wait, more colonies fall. More families are destroyed. We can't save everyone, but we can try to save some." Zethkar felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Doubt. These humans were asking to volunteer for an impossible mission to save people they had never met. It went against every principle of military logic he knew. "I can't authorize this mission," he said finally. "The risk is too great." "Then we'll go without authorization," Foster said quietly. "Lieutenant Commander, that would be desertion." "No, sir. That would be doing our job." Grant stood up. "Commander, I understand your position, but we came here to fight alongside the Galaxy's defenders. If you won't let us fight, we'll find our own way to help." After the humans left, Zethkar sat alone in his office. He activated his personal communication system and called his superior, General Kethfer. "Commander, what is your assessment of the human military capability?" "Sir, I'm not sure anymore." "Explain." Zethkar chose his words carefully. "They don't fight like any species I've studied. They make decisions based on protecting others rather than winning battles. They take risks that should be impossible. And somehow they succeed." "Are you recommending we give them a larger role in the defense force?" "I don't know, sir. They're either the bravest warriors I've ever seen, or they're completely insane." "Which, do you think?" Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. "Both, sir. Definitely both." That night, Zethkar couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Torres and his daughter Emma, about Foster volunteering for a suicide mission, about Dr. Wade studying enemy biology to find ways to save people she had never met. He activated his computer and began reviewing human history again. But this time, he wasn't looking at their wars. He was looking at their heroes. What he found changed everything. Humans had a long history of individuals who sacrificed themselves for others. Soldiers who threw themselves on explosives to save their friends. Pilots who flew damaged aircraft away from cities. Doctors who stayed with patients during disasters. But it wasn't just soldiers and heroes. It was ordinary people. Parents who ran into burning buildings to save children. Strangers who jumped into rivers to rescue drowning people. Citizens who hid refugees during wars. Zethkar realized that what he had seen in the battle wasn't unusual. Human behavior. It was normal human behavior. They were all ready to die for others, even people they didn't know. The next morning, Foster's team launched their mission without authorization. Zethkar watched their 3 small ships disappear into Shrek-Thi territory. He had 2 choices: report them for desertion or help them succeed. He made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He began feeding them intelligence data through encrypted channels. Patrol routes, defense positions, facility, locations. Everything they needed to complete their impossible mission. 2 days later, Foster's voice came through on emergency frequency. "Command, this is Foster. We've reached the primary breeding facility. Beginning demolition sequence." "Lieutenant Commander, what's your extraction plan?" There was silence for a moment. Then Foster's voice came back, very quiet. "There is no extraction plan, Commander. Dr. Wade is staying behind to make sure the charges detonate properly. The facility will be completely destroyed. And the rest of your team? We're going to try to reach the secondary facility. If we can destroy both, it will set their breeding program back years." Zethkar felt his throat tighten. "Foster, you don't have to do this." "Yes, sir, we do. Tell Emma Torres that her daddy's friends are thinking about her." The communication went dead. 6 hours later, sensors detected massive explosions in Shrek-Thi territory. Both breeding facilities had been destroyed. Foster and Clark had completed their mission. None of them came home. Zethkar sat in his office, staring at the reports. 3 humans had just saved millions of lives by giving up their own. They had done something he would never have thought possible. For the first time in his career, he was beginning to understand that humans didn't fight wars the way other species did. They fought them the way wars should be fought. The destruction of the breeding facilities should have been a major victory. The Shrek-Thi had lost the ability to create new warriors for years. But instead of retreating, they became more dangerous. Like wounded animals, they attacked everything in their path with desperate fury. 7 more colonies fell in the next week. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session. Zethkar stood in the great chamber, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of worlds. The mood was dark. "The situation is worse than we predicted," announced Council Leader Vashti. "The Shrek-Thi have adapted to our defensive strategies. They're avoiding our main fleets and striking at undefended systems." General Kethver activated a holographic display showing the current battle lines. Red areas marked Shrek-Thi control. They covered nearly a quarter of the outer rim. Our forces are spread too thin. Every time we move to defend one system, they attack somewhere else. "What are our options?" asked the representative from the Crystal Worlds. "Limited," Kethver replied. "We can continue the current strategy and hope to wear them down over several years. We can withdraw to more defensible positions and sacrifice the outer colonies. Or we can attempt a major offensive against their home systems. What about surrender? Negotiations?" The question came from the Harbinger delegate. The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to say it, but everyone was thinking it. The war was not going well. Zethkar felt a hand on his shoulder. Admiral Grant stood beside him, wearing a new uniform. She had been promoted after the sacrifice of Foster's team. "Admiral, I didn't see you come in." "Just arrived from Earth," she said quietly. "I have a request to make to the Council." "What kind of request?" Grant's eyes were hard. "Full operational control of Sector 7. Zethkar stared at her. "Admiral, Sector 7 is the most contested area of the front. It has over 50 star systems and millions of civilians." "I know. The humans have less than 200 ships in the entire galaxy. The Shrek-Thi have thousands in that sector alone. I know that too." Before Zethkar could argue further, Council Leader Vesti called for new business. Grant stepped forward. "Honored Council, Admiral Lisa Grant of Earth, requesting permission to address the Assembly." Vashti looked surprised. Admiral, this is a closed session for senior military commanders only. With respect, ma'am, I am a senior military commander, and I have a proposal that could change this war. The council chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. Finally, Vashti nodded. You may speak, Admiral. Grant walked to the center of the chamber. Every alien eye watched her small human form. Honored delegates, your current strategy isn't working. The Shreg-Thi are winning because they're fighting the war they want to fight. Big swarms, overwhelming numbers, predictable attacks. You're playing their game. General Kethver spoke up. Admiral, this is how galactic warfare has been conducted for thousands of years. There are proven principles. That don't work against the Shreg-Thi, Grant interrupted. They've figured out your proven principles. They know exactly what you're going to do before you do it. And what do you suggest? Vashti asked. Give humanity control of Sector 7. Let us fight the war our way. The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of delegates spoke at once. Zethkar heard fragments of conversation. Impossible. Suicide. They have no experience. Vashti called for order. Admiral Grant, your species has been part of the galactic community for less than 6 months. Your largest ship carries fewer than 1,000 crew members. How can you possibly handle a sector-wide campaign? Grant activated her own holographic display. It showed Earth's military forces. We don't have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but we have something else. We have General Paul Martinez. A new human stepped forward. He was older. Then Grant, with gray hair and scars on his face. His uniform showed medals that Zethkar didn't recognize. General Martinez led our forces during the Europa campaign, Grant continued. He developed tactics that let us win battles against impossible odds. What kind of tactics? Kethvar asked. Martinez activated the display. Deep strike operations. Instead of fighting their main forces, we attack their supply lines, communication networks, and command centers. We don't try to destroy their armies. We make it impossible for their armies to function. That's extremely risky, Vashti said. If you fail, the entire sector could be lost. The sector is already being lost, Grant replied. In the past week, you've lost 3 more systems using conventional tactics. What do you have to lose by trying something different? Zethkar stood up. Council leader, I request permission to speak. Granted, Commander. Zethkar looked around the chamber. I have studied human military capabilities extensively. I initially believed they were too primitive for modern warfare. I was wrong. He paused. They don't fight like any species I've encountered. They take risks that seem impossible. They make sacrifices that seem insane. And somehow, they win. 1. Successful mission doesn't prove anything, Kethver argued. It's not just one mission, Zethkar replied. It's their entire approach to war. They don't fight to avoid losing. They fight to ensure others can survive. That changes everything. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates supported giving humans a chance. Others worried about the risks. Finally, Vashti called for a vote. All in favor of granting Admiral Grant operational control of Sector 7? Zethkar voted yes. So did enough others to carry the motion. Admiral Grant, Sector 7 is yours. May the gods help us all. 2 days later, Zethkar stood in the Human Command Center, watching General Martinez brief his officers. The room was smaller than a typical hegemony command post, but it buzzed with energy. Our first target is the Shreg-Thi supply depot at Kepler Station, Martinez explained to his staff. It's heavily defended, but it supplies their entire northern fleet. Captain Nicole Hayes raised her hand. Sir, intelligence reports show over 500 enemy ships in that area. We only have 40 ships available for the operation. Correct. Which is why we're not going to fight 500 ships. I don't understand, sir. Martinez smiled. Captain, how do you stop a 500-ship fleet? Destroy it? Wrong. You make it impossible for those 500 ships to do their job. You cut their fuel supply. You destroy their communication relays. You attack their repair facilities. You make them choose between protecting their supplies and protecting their objectives. Commander Steve Walsh, who had survived the first battle, nodded. Hit them where they don't expect it. Exactly. The Shrek Thee expect us to attack their fleets. Instead, we're going to attack everything around their fleets. By the time they figure out what we're doing, they'll be stranded without supplies or support. Zethkar listened to the briefing with growing amazement. Martinez wasn't planning a battle. He was planning dozens of small strikes designed to cripple the enemy's ability to fight. What about casualties? Hayes asked. Martinez's expression became serious. We're going to take losses. Some of you won't be coming home. But remember why. We're doing this. Every day we delay them is another day for civilians to evacuate. Every supply depot we destroy is fewer weapons they can use against innocent people. The room fell quiet. Then Walsh spoke up. When do we start, sir? Tonight. Hayes, you'll lead the first strike team. Walsh, you take the second. Remember, speed and surprise are our only advantages. Get in, hit your targets, get out. Don't try to fight their main forces. As the officers filed out to prepare for the mission, Zethkar approached Martinez. General, can I ask you something? Of course, Commander. Why are you doing this? Your people could stay on Earth, safe from all this. Why risk everything for strangers? Martinez looked out the window at the stars. Commander, my grandfather, fought in something we called World War II. One day, I asked him the same question. He told me that freedom isn't free. Someone always has to pay the price. The question is whether you're willing to be the one who pays it. And you're willing? All of us are. That's what makes us human. That night, Zethkar watched as 40 human ships launched into the darkness. They were heading into impossible odds against an enemy that had crushed every force sent against them. For the first time since the war began, he felt hope. The first reports came in 3 hours after the human strike teams launched. Zethkar stood in the command center, watching the tactical displays with growing disbelief. Sir, the communications officer announced, Captain Hayes reports successful destruction of Supply Depot 7. No casualties. Commander Walsh reports communication relay station Meta is offline. Minor damage to his ship. Third strike team has destroyed the fuel processing plant at Gamma Station. Zethkar stared at the reports. In one night, the humans had crippled 3 major Shrek Thee installations without losing a single ship. It was impossible, but it was happening. How are they doing this? He asked General Martinez. Martinez smiled tiredly. We're not fighting their strengths, Commander. We're attacking their weaknesses. The Shrek Thee build big, powerful fleets, but they need massive support systems to keep those fleets running. Cut the support, and the fleets become useless. Over. The next week, the pattern continued. Human strike teams hit fuel depots, communication centers, repair facilities, and supply convoys. The Shrek Thee tried to respond, but every time they moved ships to protect one target, the humans attacked somewhere else. They're everywhere, reported a captured Shrek Thee commander during interrogation. We protect the fuel depot, they hit the communication station. We guard the communication station. They destroy the repair facility. How can 40 ships be in so many places? Zethkar was beginning to understand. The humans weren't trying to win big battles. They were fighting hundreds of small battles, each one designed to weaken the enemy's ability to fight the war. But the real shock came on day 8. Commander, the sensor officer called out, massive Shrek Thee fleet movement. It looks like they're concentrating their forces for a major attack. Zethkar studied the display. Over 1,000 enemy ships were gathering near the Shrakthi homeworld. They're preparing for a final assault. They want to end this war with one overwhelming attack. Where will they strike? Martinez asked. The civilian evacuation routes. If they can cut off the refugee convoys, they can force us to surrender to save the innocent lives. Martinez nodded grimly. How long before they reach the evacuation zones? 18 hours. And how long for the hegemony main fleet to respond? 24 hours minimum. So the evacuees will be defenseless for at least 6 hours. Zethkar felt sick. General, I'm sorry. We should never have trusted this to such a small force. When the council finds out, Commander, Martinez interrupted. How many human ships do we have available? 37 operational vessels. And how? Many Shrakthi ships are in that attack fleet? Over 1,000. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Then he activated his communicator. All ship commanders, report to the briefing room immediately. 20 minutes later, Zethkar sat in the back of the room as Martinez addressed his captains. Every human face looked tired but determined. People, this is it. The Shrakthi are throwing everything they have at the civilian evacuation routes. Over 1,000 ships. If they succeed, millions of innocent people will die. Captain Hayes spoke up. What's our mission, sir? Stop them. The room was silent. Finally, Commander Walsh asked the question everyone was thinking. Sir, with respect, how do 37 ships stop 1,000? Martinez walked to the tactical display, the same way 3 ships stopped 800 ships 2 weeks ago. The same way Foster's team destroyed 2 breeding facilities. The same way we've been winning this entire campaign. He looked around the room. We don't fight to win. We fight to protect people who can't protect themselves. But sir, Hayes said quietly, the odds don't matter, Martinez replied. What matters is that there are families on those evacuation ships. Children who are scared and want to go home. Old people who have never hurt anyone. They're counting on us. Zethkar watched the faces of the human officers. He saw fear in their eyes. They knew this was a suicide mission. But he also saw something else. The same thing he had seen in Torres when he charged the Shrakthi swarm. The same thing he had seen in Foster when she volunteered for the reconnaissance mission. They were going to do it anyway. What's the plan, sir? Walsh asked. Simple. We're going to hit them with everything we have. Not their ships, their coordination. The Shrakthi fight as one massive organism. But if we can disrupt their command structure, break their communication, scatter their formation, maybe we can buy enough time for the evacuees to reach safety. And if we don't make it out? Martinez looked at each officer in turn. Then we make sure our sacrifice means something. Every minute we hold them is another minute for innocent people to escape. The meeting ended with quiet preparation. Ships were refueled and rearmed. Crews said goodbye to friends. Some recorded messages for families back on Earth. Zethkar found himself in the observation deck, watching the human fleet prepare to launch. Admiral Grant joined him. Admiral, I need to ask you something. Of course, Commander. Why? Why are your people willing to die for strangers? I've studied hundreds of species, and I've never seen anything like this. Grant was quiet for a long moment. Commander, have you ever heard the phrase, no greater love? No, it's from an old Earth. Text. No greater love has anyone than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. But humans have always interpreted that broadly. We consider all innocent people to be our friends, even if we've never met them. That's not logical. No, it's not, but it's right. Grant watched her ships moving into formation. We learned something a long time ago, Commander. Evil wins when good people do nothing. We've decided that we'll never be the people who do nothing. The human fleet launched 2 hours later. 37 small ships heading toward impossible. Odds Zethkar watched the battle from the command center. At first, it looked like every other hopeless fight. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. But then something miraculous happened. Instead of forming defensive lines or trying to escape, the human ships scattered in all directions. They attacked the Shreg-Thi fleet from dozens of angles at once. They targeted command ships, communication relays, and coordination centers. The massive enemy fleet began to break apart. Without central coordination, the Shreg-Thi ships couldn't fight as one organism. They became confused, disorganized, vulnerable. Captain Hayes rammed her damaged ship into the enemy flagship. Commander Walsh led a suicide attack on their main communication array. One by one, the human ships were destroyed, but each sacrifice weakened the enemy further. When it was over, only 7 human ships remained operational, but the Shreg-Thi attack fleet was scattered and broken. The evacuation. Convoys had reached safety. 3 days later, the main hegemony fleet arrived to find the Shreg-Thi in full retreat. Without their breeding facilities, supply lines, and command structure, they could no longer maintain their war effort. The war was over. Zethkar stood in his office, writing his final report. Through his window, he could see Earth's blue marble, hanging in space like a precious jewel. Admiral Grant entered without knocking. "Commander, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For giving us the chance to prove ourselves. For believing in us when no one else would." Zethkar set down his writing pad. "Admiral, I need to confess something. I didn't believe in you. I thought your species was primitive and emotional. I was wrong about everything. What changed your mind? Your people taught me the difference between fighting to avoid losing and fighting to help others win. I spent 3 centuries studying warfare, but I never understood what war was really for until I met humans." Grant smiled. "And what is it for, Commander?" "It's for protecting people who can't protect themselves. It's for ensuring that innocent families can live in peace. It's for making sure that little girls like Emma Torres can grow up safe and happy. Now, you understand." Zethkar looked out at the stars. "Admiral, I'm recommending that humans be given permanent command of the Galactic Defense Force, not because you have the best ships or the most advanced weapons, but because you're the only species that truly understands why we fight. We'd be honored." As Grant left, Zethkar returned to his report. He wrote about human courage, sacrifice, and determination. But most of all, he wrote about love. Because that's what he had seen in every human warrior. Not hatred for the enemy, but love for the innocent. He had thought he understood war. Then he saw humanity unleashed, and learned that the greatest weapon in the universe wasn't technology or tactics or numbers. Was the willingness to die so that others might live. Galaxy would never be the same.